Hey guys, it's Amy at Zoe Beck, and I'm gonna do a tag today. It's the 25 bookish facts about me. I think that's the name of the tag. I forgot to write this down. Anyway, so I was tagged by Charlie Brooke. This tag has been going around for many, many years. I guess it's like 2 or 3 years old, and I couldn't find like an original who actually did the original. So, but it's one that, again, it says has been floating around. I've never done it, I don't think. I'm pretty sure I've not done this one. And I got tagged. So I thought I would just do this for the fun of it. And maybe you guys will learn a little bit about me. Who knows? I don't know if you want to. Anyway, so here are 25 bookish facts. So number 1 is I memorize words. I do not know my phonics. I was not taught them correctly because I had earaches all the way through 2nd grade and I didn't hear very well for quite a few months of that year. So I kind of stunted my reading because I didn't understand how people were learning how to sound out words for many years. Even now I still don't sound out words very well. I look at the word and go, does it look like another word I know that I memorized, that I know how to say? And I definitely don't know how to say words that I've read for many years and I've just never heard them and I don't know how to say them. So that's that's just the way it is. So I've memorized all the words that I know, which is probably why I have a bad memory. Anyway, question number 2, or fact number 2, sorry, is the first book I remember loving. Now I did read a lot as a kid. I don't think I was prolific or anything. I wasn't like an early reader. I was just on time. I had no problem that way. I just didn't read a lot. I read a lot, but I don't remember everything I read. But I do remember in 2nd grade, I discovered The Boxcar Children by Gertrude Chandler Warner. Now, what's really funny about this is that I remember the first book, and we had a big red copy of it at the library that I checked out every year, if not once or twice through 5th grade. I read that book so many times. It was the first book I can say I reread a lot as well. But I've never owned a copy, and I actually didn't know that they continued the series. Or I don't remember that. I remember the first book and loving the first book, and I actually want to get a copy now because I haven't read it, since I was probably 10. But the point is, it's one of those books that I still have fond memories of, this hardback red book that was in my library. And we had it where you could, we wrote in the little card that goes in the back when we checked it out. And for those years, I was the one who checked it out the most. I had my name on that quite a few times. Because when I didn't know what to read, I would go and pick that book up again. So anyway, fact number 3, I can't want to say question, sorry. Fact number 3 is I read a biography on Thomas Edison, probably in the 3rd grade. And I think I read the same one or different ones on him every year after through grade school. I was really a fan of Thomas Edison and all his inventions. I loved the idea of him working for the railroad and having that, the caboose. He had a little like kind of lab in the back of it for a little bit and doing his experiments and things. It was just fascinating for me at the time. Not that I was into doing experiments, but I just love that. And it's funny, that was one, like the first nonfiction that I remember loving a lot. Fact number 4 is I read Nancy Drew and Hardy Boy mysteries, mostly Nancy Drew, from the time I was in grade school, but I read them all the way into high school. And I'm a little ashamed of this, but in high school they had revamped it. I think when I was in high school or when I was in middle school, they had started the new, I don't know, it was the Nancy Drew Files, or it was another series of it. So I'd read all the old ones when I was younger, and they started bringing out these new ones, and I stopped buying them, but I still wanted to get them from the library. So I just told him I had a younger sister that I was getting them for. Yeah, that was not maybe my best moment, but anyway, I enjoyed Nancy Drew for many, many years. Fact number 5. And Then There Were None is by Agatha Christie, is what I would consider my first adult book that I read. And I read this in 7th grade at the beginning of the year. And if you can hear a little scratching, that is Cooper playing with everything on my desk just because I'm on this, doing this. Anyway, so, And Then There Were None was my first Agatha Christie mystery you know, an adult mystery with all adult characters and all this stuff, and it blew my mind, and I went on an Agatha Christie binge after this, and this is probably one of the reasons why I started reading a whole lot of books, was because I read at least 5 or 6 of these books that year, maybe more. I can't remember. I just know I started binging them, and for me, that was a binge because I didn't read a whole lot. I mean, I was reading, but I didn't, you know, read to the numbers I do now. But I still read a lot. So, but that was my first adult book. I do have a video on the tag for your first adult book. I will link that down below. Fact number 6 is the Dragonlance Chronicles were the first adult fantasy books that I read. So these books are, again, it was a trilogy. They're based off of the D&D cycle of the Dragonlance section of that D&D world, and I picked them up used. Clearly they're pretty battered now because I've read them several times over the years, not recently. But these are like my first, I really fell in love with these characters. Even if now I look back and they're a little cardboard in some parts of it, but it's still a story it really resonated at the time when I was 13. So it took me 8 months to read the first book. It was just so different from everything else I was reading. As I said, I had just gone through a binge of Agatha Christie, which, again, I said, I wish I knew how many books I had read of hers, but I read a whole bunch that year. And then I picked this up. My dad bought me the trilogy, and it took me 8 months to read this one. The next 2 did not take me as long. They might have taken me 2 months each, but still, I read Dragonlance books for years, like, because they had so many coming out there for a while. I owned more than I ever read, but I read at least the first 20 or so in that series over the years. Bookish fact number 7 is I borrowed Tad Williams' The Dragonbone Chair from a friend of mine in, I think it was 8th and 9th grade. It was right around there, because I'm pretty sure it was 9th grade. And this actually was, after reading the Dragonlance, I'd kind of gotten into it, but this one just blew me away. Like, this was like, oh, I love this. This is what was really good. And so I love this series, and I was the first one I had to wait for books to come out on to finish the trilogy and understand the pain of that. But this copy alone is actually the copy I borrowed from my friend. I feel really bad now, many years later, that I forced her to let me borrow this book and keep it after she had read it. And I got to keep it. I don't know. I still feel bad about that. Fact number 8 is, so only on vacation do I allow myself to bring a book to bed. So during, like, ever since I got out of college, when I got to my first job out of college, I was no longer allowed to bring books to bed, like, to the bedroom. I had books on bookshelves in there, but not the book I was currently reading, because I have a tendency to then roll over and think, oh, there's the book. Maybe I'll read a little bit, and then it'd be hours later. So I had to stop bringing the book into the room with me, and I stopped that, again, I said, probably about when I was about 22. And since then, the only time I get to bring the book to bed with me is on vacation, because I figure I'm allowed to read a book in bed. And usually, because I'm with family on a lot of my vacations, that's usually where I escape to get a little time by myself, is to the bedroom wherever I'm at. So that is the only time a book that I'm currently reading comes even close to my bedroom. Let's see here. Bookish fact number 9. Oh my god, this is gonna be huge. I'm going too slow here. Number 9 is I have a tendency to scan down the page, especially when my favorite characters are in peril. I've had to actually put my hand on the bottom of pages or on the other page to stop myself from scanning ahead. And I've done that since I was a kid. I remember doing that in books I was reading in grade school. Like, I always wanted to look ahead. I think only one time I spoiled myself by reading the end, and I never did that again, but I still have a tendency to scan ahead. Like, if I'm having my characters in trouble, I might scan ahead to make sure they're okay in a page later or so, and then I'll go back and read it. And I still do that to this day, and I fight myself every day not to scan ahead to see what's coming up. And I have a tendency to, my eye to go to the dialogue. And I try not to do that, but I do it all the time. Bookish fact number 10 is I always use a bookmark. And it could be a piece of paper, it could be a sticky note, it could be, you know, bookmarks I've gotten from people or places I've been, but I always use a bookmark. I do not dog ear my pages. You people are bad. You're allowed to do it on your own books, but don't do them on my books if you borrow them. That's all I'm saying. Bookish fact number 11 is I don't annotate my books. Now, I did in college when I had to write papers, and even then I didn't do a whole lot. But now, once in a while, there'll be something I'll tab, and then that's something I want to remember when I'm doing a wrap-up, or I tab it to put a note into it. Like, I did a buddy read on Angle of Repose recently by, was it Wallace? Something Stagger. I can't remember the name. Anyway, point is, I have a lot of tabs in there and handwritten things of when he was starting to make me mad. And I was just like, that'll be cool to go back and look at because I was paying attention. But I don't write in my books anymore. I think I mostly let, as I said, I'll tab it, but I won't actually write in the books. Not since college. 12. Though I've tried, I cannot read more than one physical book at a time. I've tried this multiple times. I even tried a nonfiction and a fiction. I've tried 2 different kinds of fiction. I've tried a lot of things. So the only way I can read 2 books at the same time is one's an audio and one's physical. Now, even ebooks, I can't do an ebook and a physical very often. It's very rare because usually I want to just get involved in one story. I can't, as I said, once in a while I'll do an audio and a physical at the same time, but not very often. Cooper, what are you doing? Falling off. Let's see here. Number 13 is I have been tracking since 1998. All the books that I've read. So they're all handwritten in here since 1998. And again, this is the new book, those new ones. So I have it all the way up until what I've just finished the other day. So I just, you know, like so I've read 92 books this year so far. And that's such a great reference because I only have Goodreads back to 2009. And this I can go back and look if I'm looking for a book. I'm like, I swear I read that book. And I can go back and find out when I read it. Now, if it happened before that, that's too bad. But my great aunt had me start doing that because she, again, being so much older than me, she was forgetting what books she had read. And I didn't think anything of it at the time when I started it, but I have been so glad that I started it way back then to track my reading that way. It's just, even though it's physically, it's not on the computer, it's still very interesting. I like to go back and look every once in a while. Number 14 is, I had a friend who read me the first part of Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte probably about a dozen times over the years in high school. So she loved this book. It was one of her favorites, and I never picked it up, maybe because it was one of her favorites. I have one of those things where people say I should read something and I won't read it on certain books. This is one of them. So it took me many years to actually read the whole book, but she read me the very beginning of this book probably about a dozen times over 4 years, usually while we were making chocolate chip cookies. For some reason, she would sit there and read while I was making the cookies. Just a memory I have. But I did finally finish that book many years. I've read it a couple times now, but during high school, never finished it. Let's see here. So there's number, what did I say, 15? Oh, I'm doing bad here. So 15, in middle school, I was in just the regular English class, but there was a class that was the, you know, I don't know, the advanced class or whatever. I don't remember what they called it anymore. But I wasn't in that class. I didn't test high enough, and I'll go back to my whole reading issues with the memorization. But the point is that they got to read, I think in 7th grade, they got to read The Diary of Anne Frank, and in 8th grade, they read Lord of the Flies. So, because I was upset we did not get to read those in my classes, I actually read them after everybody else had read them. But I did read them in middle school because I wanted to know what everybody was talking about. They'd talk about a certain scene on a certain page. Well, I wanted to read those books. Now, and I looked at my shelf. I don't own those books. My dad owns those books. So I read my dad's copies of both of those books. I thought I had an Anne Frank one, but it's either I put it somewhere or I'm just not seeing it. But anyway, I read them so long ago. I mean, I've read, yeah, I don't think I've reread either one of those. But number 16, this is a funny Bookish fact. This comes back to the fact I was an English major in college, and I still, to this day, hate that I missed one question on this test about a fight in a book. I read both books, On the Road by Jack Kerouac and, My Antonia by Willa Cather. And, Willa Cather. Anyway, point is that there was a question about a fight. Somebody comes in and fights with somebody. And I knew I'd read it, but I could not remember what book because I'd read like 10 books that semester for that class as well as some other classes. And I put the wrong book down. And I'm still upset about that to this day. Anyway, number 17 is I got a little bookish respect. Kind of LOL. Let's joke about this. In middle school, God, I cannot talk today. In high school, because I read books that not everybody else was reading, or not at least at that right away. Like, I'm talking like 14, 15, and 16. I was already reading a lot of horror. And at the time, that wasn't maybe quite something you would see another girl read. I don't know how to say that, but again, you have to understand when I went to school. But like, I was like taking books like The Shining and Watchers. And then the one that, when I read this whole series in school, I loved taking these, was Necroscope by Brian Lumley. So, because everybody's like, oh, what are you reading? And they're like, fantastic. Like, I actually want to read this series. I have not read this in decades. And, but it was like the best book. My mom's cousin gave me all these books when he left college, and there were all these horror books. They're awesome. I still have most of them that he gave me because they were all, I read them all in high school. It was really awesome. And I got a lot of respect for that because I was reading chunky books in high school, and they were, they were mostly horror, and that was funny. Anyways, so fact number 18 is I decided I needed a part-time job to pay for a vacation. I wanted to go on a cruise in February with a friend of mine. And I decided to work part-time somewhere. I had my 40-hour job, but I wanted to get a part-time job in order to do that. So I got a job at Walden Books for the season. So I started working in September, and then I figured I'd work through, as long as they wanted me to January, and then I'd go on my cruise in February. Well, so this was great, is that it was one of those things where I only expected to work there 4 or 5 months. But once we get to January and I got back from my vacation in February, they kept putting me on the schedule. And I'm like, aren't you going to let me go? Because it's past the Christmas season. And I was one of 2 who got to stay on part-time for the rest of the year. So actually, I worked there almost 3 years until I moved out of state. So great part-time job. It was not supposed to be that way. So I worked 10 to 20 extra hours a week there. Anyway. And then number 19 is that I probably spent, if a quarter to a half of my paycheck usually went to books, because I wasn't making that much money, because it was, it was minimum wage at the time, and I wasn't making that many hours. So a lot of my money went back into the books that I got there, because you get a discount when you work there. Anyway, and I still have some of those books. A lot of those books I've read. I did find a couple that I have not read yet, so I need to read those now all these years later. So number 20 is I have hundreds of ebooks that I've bought over the years, especially since ebooks became popular. I bought a whole bunch there at the beginning when I got my first Kindle. And I still buy a lot every month. Like, not a lot. I mean, I would say I buy a couple. I buy a handful here and there. But I rarely read them. And I read them more on vacation than I do during normal times, because I just don't like to read ebooks. I like the physical book in my hand. I do like the price of ebooks, but I like the cheap stuff. So I do read ebooks, but just not as many as I should. I buy probably more than I read by far. So it's another thing I could probably cut back on, and actually I should really try to read more ebooks. I just don't. 21 is I borrow books from my parents and my brother quite frequently, and vice versa, but because they like different things, like all have different genres, then I get, because I'm so eclectic, I get to read all different kinds of books from that they have, like, you know, so kind of works out. We do all read in my family. Not like my brother doesn't read quite as much as the rest of us, but he still reads. And then my mom reads a lot. Like I would say of all of us, she reads the most books, but then she's retired. But she always was a big reader. And then my dad is very much not able to stay on topic. He jumps from book to book, and he never finishes anything in time. So when I let him borrow my books, I'm pretty much going, I'm probably never going to see that again. But it's great because they all read different things, and so I get different books from all different directions. That's kind of cool. And they borrow books from me too, because again, I have a lot of different things that are in the genres they like. 22 is I always buy my cousin's kids are the only ones that it's only one of my cousins has 2 kids, and I always buy them books for Christmas, and I'm going to be probably doing that until I stop buying for them when they, you know, reach college age or whatever. But at this point, every year I talk to their mom. I go, what books do they like? I'll buy them some books, and then that's what they get from Christmas from me every year. So I am the book aunt. And then let's see here. 23 is I feel that as someone who has a bachelor in English literature, I still feel that there are books that I should read and that I haven't read, and that but the thing is that a lot of my reading is I like the ride. I don't want to analyze everything I read, so I do like books that are just fun. So I'm very diverse, as I said, and so it's kind of funny that I feel like I should still read some of these classics, or like a literary fiction that I think I should get to, and then I might fight it, but a lot of times I'll still get around to it at some point, at least try it. I just need things to be different. I can't read the same kind of book all the time. That's why I have so many genres that I enjoy. And then 24 is, there was a lot of classics we read in school, and I know I can't even think what the first one I probably read. Like, I don't remember that. But the first book that I myself picked up that was the first honkin' huge one, I mean, again, I told you about the 2 that I read in middle school. So, like, I did pick up some smaller ones and along the way. I know that there are other books, but the one that I remember picking up that everybody was impressed that I pick up, because it was a big one. I was in the middle of high school. I think I was a junior in high school. I'm not sure. But for me, it was big. And I picked up The Three Musketeers by Alexander Dumas. And again, I didn't have to. I wanted to. I wanted to read the actual story. And as I said, it's one of my favorite books. And I'm hoping to reread that really soon here now and get to the other books that are in that series. But I still think, you know, people were impressed that I picked that up at that time. Now, again, a lot of people pick up classics much earlier than I do, and a lot bigger ones, but for the people I knew, they were impressed I picked that up. I don't know. And then 25, the very last one. Since I've joined BookTube, I have gotten rid of a lot of books in my collection due to I decided I don't read those books anymore, or I've read them and I didn't like them. But I have to say that my TBR has grown at least a third. I've bought a lot of books in the last 2 years, or it's a year and a half since I joined BookTube. So I've added a lot of books to the stuff I want to read. I would say my TBR is at least over 600, because I was at 400 when I started. So I have a lot of reading to do. Anyway, so those are the 25 bookish facts. I went way too long on this. Hey, if you want to do this, go ahead. I'm not going to tag anybody because I don't know who's done this. This is so old that, especially if people have done this, I just think it's fun, and I did it, and I hope you enjoyed it or learned a few things about me. Anyway, I will talk to you guys later. Bye.